Welcome back. You're watching The Firm. You'd think after 2 Supreme Court orders, the SEBI Sahara case would have reached final conclusion. But it hasn't. Sahara continues to push for more time and no payment, even as SEBI filed this week a second contempt petition against Sahara. Here's a quick recap. August 31st, Justices Radhakrishnan and Kehar tell Sahara to hand over all OFCD investor documents in 10 days and to pay to SEBI over 24,000 crore rupees within 3 months. Sahara fails the document submission deadline, and in November, SEBI files a contempt petition. December 5th, Sahara manages to get an extension from the Chief Justice's bench. It has now 15 days to submit the documents and a payment schedule that concludes in February. But even as we speak, the document submission is incomplete and Sahara has missed both the January and February payment deadlines. SEBI has filed a second contempt petition alleging Sahara's non-compliance with the December 5th Supreme Court order. Sahara has moved an interim application asking for 5 days it claims it is owed to submit those documents. Sahara also argues that it has redeemed most of the OFCDs. It no longer has to pay anything to SEBI. Instead of double paying, it should be allowed to offer a security instead. So 2 questions emerge from this week's developments. How many times can a Supreme Court order be amended? And is SEBI unwilling or unable to seize Sahara's assets? Well, to answer those questions, I have with me Supreme Court lawyer Gopal Jain and financial law expert Sandeep Parekh. Sandeep's also former Executive Director Legal at SEBI. Sandeep, Gopal, thank you very much for joining me. Gopal, I'm going to start with you. My first question to you is, once a Supreme Court order is passed, can a losing party, or how many times can a losing party keep finding ways and means to get that order amended, modified, changed, whatever word you want?
So, Menka, under the Indian Constitution, a judgment of the Supreme Court is final and binding. What was given by them in August was a judgment which is binding. It's unusual and rare to have repeated attempts or applications made to try and circumvent the effect or the directions given in that order. Normally, the Constitution provides for a review petition.
The review in this case was applied for and rejected. So that was done with, and yet they got some relief in a December 5th order.
Yes, that's exactly my point, that the constitutional remedies of Article 136, the SLP, and the review under 137 both stand dismissed. The judgment therefore becomes final and has to be implemented in letter and spirit by the person against whom it's directed. But obviously Sahara is looking for Sahara from these applications, which, as I said, is an indirect way of somehow wriggling out of those directions, buying more time. And in that process you send a wrong signal that you are abusing the process of court to try and circumvent a judgment or a direction given by the court. And when it comes to investors, I think a strong signal must go that if the court takes the view, it has to be implemented and they will not provide or allow a side door entry to try and get out of it.
But tell me one thing, Gopal, on what grounds can an interim application be admitted, given that we already have 2 Supreme Court decisions, and in both cases, when arguments were made prior to those decisions, this issue of redemptions was argued. It got no relief in terms of the amount to be reduced. Now it's trying to do so through an interim application. On what grounds?
Menka, you're absolutely right. On merits, you cannot reopen an issue. Sometimes courts do admit or entertain an application, but that is more procedural, take a little more time, some flexibility in aid of implementation of the order, not to thwart the order or its implementation. And that's where I think these 2 applications are an attempt to thwart and impede rather than enable and facilitate. If, as you rightly said, 15 days, 5 days, that's procedural, and you can certainly go and say, I need a little more time. That is understandable. But any dilution or change of what I call the substantive direction or the heart and soul of the order would certainly be a way of trying to dilute the order.
I completely agree with Gopal in terms of seems to be a ploy to amend the judgment which is final and binding, and I don't really see this as procedural or an extension of time. Really, it's kind of overturning the entire ruling of August of last year. So I mean, it's very clear that money has to be paid to SEBI, and SEBI is supposed to kind of find the investors.
All right. So if it's very clear that they are trying to get out of what August 31st order tells them to do, why isn't SEBI doing anything about it? I mean, except for filing contempt petitions, and that seems to take forever. The November contempt petition came up for hearing for the first time this week in February. The second contempt petition they filed, God knows when that will come up. Why isn't SEBI doing anything?
So let me kind of turn the table on that question, which is a contempt ruling can come in 30 seconds if the Supreme Court judges want to hear it tomorrow morning.
But you have to issue notice to all parties, etc., etc.
Right.
That's a process. When hearings come up, counsels have to be available.
Okay. So now let me contrast it with the alternative, which is attachment of property. Number one, they only have the statutory power to attach bank accounts only for a period of 3 months.
Right.
And to the best of my knowledge, they've never attached either bank accounts or real estate.
But it does have the powers, even for 3 months, to freeze accounts. It does have the powers, very clearly laid out by the August 31st order, to go ahead and freeze properties of, Sahara and its group entities. So why isn't it doing that?
No, but again, it has to go through a particular process, which is basically that the real estate has to be identified, number one, which is in this
So
case.
just to interrupt you there, it seems to be identified because
seems to be identified.
Sahara had,
Fair
in
enough.
fact, in an affidavit to the Supreme
Fair
Court,
enough. So-
said that all this money has been invested in various Sahara group properties.
Which basically means that SEBI has to go to, let's say, 30 district courts and kind of come out with the details of those properties in all the various affiliates of these Sahara companies and file for attachment. I think Gopal will back me up on something known as Order 21 of CPC, Civil Procedure Code, which can take years and years. So instead of a 30-second contempt ruling...
Sandeep, I wanted to point out that in 96, the Supreme Court in a judgment said the power of contempt is not just to punish, but it's also to deprive a wrongdoer of the fruits of his wrongdoing.
Right.
So in the case like this, some SEBI being a statutory authority could actually go to the court and say, look, your orders are not being complied with. You issue 2 contempt notices. Please pass directions by which I can, in one sweep of the pen or one stroke, attach properties and take coercive steps. And that would be another facet of the power of contempt.
But actually, Gopal, that's what I understand SEBI is attempting to do. Go back to the court and ask the Supreme Court to do that. Instead, when this matter came up this week in the first contempt petition hearing, the Supreme Court judges, that's Justice Radhakrishnan and Kehar, were very categorical in what they told SEBI. They said, what steps are you taking? You are not taking any action. The judgment tells you what to do, but you are not doing it. And they're not wrong, because the August 31st judgment says very clearly that if Sahara does not comply with this judgment, you have the powers to take all action, including seize their property and assets.
Menka, that's precisely the point, that some concrete steps have to be taken, and then you can go to a court and say, look, this is the problem that I'm facing, or the sort of difficulties. But I think at the moment, I don't know, but I guess no step has been taken at all.
No, so to be fair, Gopal, they filed, apparently they did write to Sahara asking for a list of all their bank accounts, all group bank accounts. They have written to banks as well to verify that information. And this week in court, the SEBI counsel said that they filed an execution order in the Bombay High Court.
So execution means that you actually you freeze the properties and then you auction them off.
So you're saying SEBI has kicked off the process of seizing, freezing assets, properties, etc. And once they have those in their control, then they will have to go through the process of establishing value, of auctioning them off, and recovering money.
And figuring out whether they own them. If they're developmental rights, somebody else owns the real estate. How do then you're auctioning developmental rights, which is of a property which is already developed. So I'm not sure how you unscramble.
Okay, so what both you gentlemen are telling me, to wrap this up, is that even if you have 2 Supreme Court orders in this country, it is not necessary that the person who is ordered to pay up will pay up. And hence it now falls upon the regulator to go through a time-consuming 3, 4, 5-year process of trying to freeze these assets, take them in their control, auction them off, and recover the money. Is that what you're saying, Gopal?
Menka, I want to point out one thing. The Supreme Court has this extraordinary power under Article 142 of the Constitution to do substantial justice, and they can pass any direction, very sweeping. So it may be a good case for a statutory regulator, apropos what Sandeep said and what you just expressed, to go to the court and say, look, this is a classic case in the interest of investors for you to exercise that power, so that it's like Ashish Nandi. He went to Supreme Court against FIRs in 4 states by one order of no arrest, he protected himself in 4 states. So sometimes an extraordinary situation requires and merits an extraordinary solution, and possibly SEBI should take a lead in this by going to the court under Article 140, seeking directions under 142.
Yeah, but what is the message, Sandeep, this sends out? As you know, as Gopal pointed out earlier, you have 2 orders, and yet they don't seem to be fully enforceable.
I think this is actually a pretty serious rule of law issue. I would say that. I would go to that extent, which is, beyond the Supreme Court, one would assume that there's only God, right? You can pray, but beyond that, hopefully, there's nothing else.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to leave it there. I can't presume that this is sort of any conclusive conversation, because as I've discovered in this case, after 3 years of covering it, that every week brings up a new twist. Gopal, Sandeep, thank you so much for joining me. And with that, we're going to wrap up this edition of The Firm. Thanks very much for watching.